Morning. It's Dana at the Arts Partnership in Tappyland, and I'm really excited today because I convinced the other half of the infamous Wheeler duo to join John Wheeler and me today, Emily Williams Wheeler. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
Good morning, John.
Hello there. Now all of our viewers will understand why my Zoom box says Emily Williams Wheeler on it. This is actually my wife's Zoom account, which she uses to teach art and along with her YouTubes and other things during this pandemic.
It's funny what we're learning about people just from little keys like that. I mean, I just think there's lots of funny little surprises in this whole new reality that we live in. And that's one of them. I never even noticed that, John, until you said it right now. So I've been meeting with you for 4 straight days and not noticed that it's Emily's account. So there's that. I feel like actually, aside from the fact that, like I'm cutting in and out kind of weirdly, my background kind of looks like today.
Oh yeah.
It got green like overnight. I felt yesterday we were on our, 47th walk of the day. And I said to Maz, it's like we're Dorothy and we've stepped out of the house into Oz. Green just happened seemingly overnight.
Well, Dana, you grew up in Wyndmere, right? So
I lived in Wyndmere and then I lived in Wahpeton.
Wahpeton, so Red River Valley. Spring here happens in about 3 days.
Yeah, and then goes away in about 3 days.
I grew up in the southern United States where spring is an entire season. And the greening up of the South really takes very much all of late February, March into April. Yeah. And it happens very, very gradually. And by May, it's into almost full summer, of course. But it's a long process in the South. Here it is days.
Yeah.
It's days. The elms were dead Sunday. Today, their leaves are out. By Monday of next week, they'll be fully leafed.
Yeah, it's incredible. I didn't ever realize, because I have lived my whole life in the Red River Valley. My grandma Del Val died when she died in March, the year that we got married. And so I went to New York for the funeral. We've got to be very similarly latitudinally aligned with New York. And their daffodils were blooming.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what is this? I mean, when you go someplace tropical in March, you don't feel like you're kind of getting ripped off. Right. But I felt a little ripped off in the Midwest when I was in New York. And when we were in England this February, my mother-in-law's flowers were in bloom, which was a little early for England. But yeah, everybody else gets spring. We just get kind of like a blink and it's done. But it's here. So don't blink too much today, because today is spring, which is lovely. I have two poems, and I don't remember which one this is, so I'm just gonna read this one. Oh, okay. I just want to say how sad I am that Garrison Keillor is disgraced, because I love these 2 little books of poetry that he collected, good poems, and then good poems for hard times. And I think he did a 3rd one. So we'll just pretend it's not a Garrison Keillor collection. He didn't write it anyway. So Working in the Rain by Robert Morgan. My father loved more than anything to work outside in wet weather. Beginning at daylight, he'd go out in dripping brush to mow or pull weeds for hog and chickens. First, his shoulders got damp, and then the drops from his hat ran down his back. When even his armpits were soaked, he came in to dry out by the fire, make coffee, read a little. But if the rain continued, he'd soon be restless and go out to sharpen tools in the shed or carry wood in from the pile, then open up a puddle to the drain, working by steps back into the downpour. I thought he sought the privacy of rain, the one time no one was likely to be out, and he was left to the intimacy of drops touching every leaf and tree in the wood, and the easy muttering of drip and runoff, the shine of pools behind grass dams. He could not resist the long ritual, the companionship and freedom of falling weather, or even the cold drenching, the heavy soak and chill of clothes, and sobbing fingers and sacrifice of shoes that earned a baking by the fire, and washed fatigue after the wandering and loneliness in the country rain. We're not coming close to yesterday's poem. I think that's going to be a tough one to top, John, but I thought that was actually kind of beautiful.
It is. It reminds me, I love one of my favorite times of year is the one that we've just been through, the tail end of winter in March and April. And I've always considered that to be really in the Northern Plains, it's really a fifth season because it certainly isn't spring, but it's really not winter yet. That snow melt, ground thawing process. And it's certainly not warm. And a lot of people really just despise that time of year.
That's me.
That's when people go to Arizona, right? But the other thing is that that spring will come eventually, right? So I'm just happy to reside in that sort of purgatory, waiting for what the inevitable spring, but still enjoying in that cold, miserable time. And I think it's the same thing with going out and enjoying a rain. I mean, because clearly, if the man was miserable,
Right.
cold and wet, and yet found a beauty in that, and that's wonderful. I understand that.
You know what? I'll say this. I think I agree with both of you. I have periods through March, early April that I just shake my fist at the sky. But I also am so acutely aware of the fact that it's getting lighter a little bit earlier in the morning. It's staying light a little bit longer in the day. And the sun starts to feel like more than light. It starts to feel like heat. And so even though you've got those kind of northwest or northeast winds coming at you, and you're walking, and then the next block you're in a blizzard, and then you're back, kind of the schizophrenia of it. There's also something, you're right, John, about that we're close, and that anticipation has some value, particularly because spring is so short here.
Yeah.
My brother and I think, as true Midwesterners, always say that summer's really over on June 21st, that it's all just kind of a steady, slow march down from there. And I think that speaks to the same kind of thing. It's really not over, but you're just aware of the fact that every second is getting just a little bit shorter. So there's that anticipation I try to be appreciative of. So I asked John to ask Emily if she would join us today. Because I just think you're so spectacular. Anytime I can spend with you makes it a bonus for me.
Me too.
Thank you. But also because the theme for today is be creative. So we themed every day this week, and this one is just the opportunity, and I'm so grateful that it's not raining, because it's a little bit harder to get outside and be creative when it's raining. Not impossible, but a little harder. But it felt sort of stupid for John and me to have a conversation about being creative and not bring, of the three of us, by far the most creative person to the conversation. So Emily, talk a little bit about your art, and also will you please remind me of the title of the piece behind you? We talked about it yesterday, but I couldn't remember.
Proverbial suburbial.
Yes, I knew it was something very clever, which is a hallmark of your work.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So talk a little bit about your work, Emily, if you would.
What I'm doing right now, or
talk about anything you want to talk about. John and I have waxed a bit on your work, and it just seems like you should get to talk about your own work.
Well, you just completed that video.
Yes.
Oh, talk about that. Yes.
Because that you kind of do that. You kind of explain that in that video.
Yes, I have just created a video on, it's called Thin Blue Line, and the evolution of a painting. And so it was the painting didn't take that long. It was the editing of the video, which I'm very, very proud of the way it turned out. So you can find it on YouTube and Facebook. But
connected to this link, Emily, so people can go to it right from here.
Okay. Yes. So it's shows you my process and my thoughts while doing a painting, and just brings you in a little bit into my head. So and it's acrylic, mixed media, huge painting, 4 feet square by about 2.5 inches deep. It's a big piece of work, which I like to do, big pieces. I'm also working a bit on a big mural right now, and have learned to adapt like everyone else during this time, which has actually been more work than I've never been this busy. I would love to have a few days break, but making videos, I make videos for teaching. I'm going to have a live interactive encaustic workshop coming up in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, so it's innovation at its best, I think.
Well, I heard, I'm not sure what that reverb is. I sound like I'm coming to you from the pit of someone's stomach. I heard yesterday Patrick Kirby had a big conference for the nonprofit sector. And he said, you know, nonprofits are built for pandemics because every day the world seems to be on fire in our office.
Yes.
And so we're constantly learning how to put out the fire, how to come up with plans C, D, E, F, G, Q, L, M, N, you know, all the way to Z. I do know my alphabet, just as anyone's concerned.
Yeah, but you got to go forward and backward, right?
Thank you. Nice covering, Molly. Thank you. And just this notion that we are always pivoting and having to be reactive and responsive and hopefully proactive. And what I will say from the nonprofit arts sector is what an amazing thing the arts have done through this time. I can't name an artist who I think has done this. Well, I'll just hunker down and hope for the best. Every artist, every arts organization has said, this is an opportunity. It might be a challenging one, but it's an opportunity to try something. So I just think I certainly want the pandemic to abate. I mean, we don't want to keep losing humans and the economy and all the really terrible pieces of this. But the upside to this enormous disruption is that the creatives have stepped in and said, we're here. We were born for here. And it's been amazing.
Yeah.
So before I forget, John, we have a question for you from Facebook.
Oh, okay.
Is it true that the Red River Valley's closest meteorological twin is Siberia? I moved to this region from north central Minnesota for college, and I was shocked by how much colder the FM winters were than in northern Minnesota.
Yes, that's a very apt description. Siberia is worse. Siberia has much longer winters, much shorter summers, and probably even much shorter springs. But yes, it is definitely a parallel of being in the center of a continent, being largely protected from the stabilizing influence of oceans by mountain ranges, whether it be the Urals or the Rockies. And so that gives it more of a north-south climate. The biggest difference between the climates of North America and Europe is that in Europe, the mountain range, the main mountain range is east-west. And so the ocean winds are able to spread throughout the continent of Europe, even into Eastern Europe. There is an influence of the ocean, which makes the summers a little cooler, the winters a little milder. We don't have that in the Great Plains, and they don't have that in Siberia. And so the weather, it comes more north-south. So when it's hot, it's dang hot. And when it's cold, it's really cold. And there's nothing between the Arctic Circle and the tropics except a few barbed wire fences to stop the weather. And so we get this dramatic change from north to south that you just don't get in Europe. And so yes, our twin would be Siberia. Good observation.
Wow.
I always believe that.
I like that. I never thought about it. So I'm going to ask a kind of a doorknob geography question. Is the main mountain range in Europe the Alps?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Okay.
And the Arctic cold can once in a while will manage to spill over the Alps, and they'll get a little snow in Rome. I mean,
Sure.
that can happen, and England can certainly have its harsh winters, and it will go below freezing and snow, and the snow will even accumulate in the north of England and get deep. But it certainly isn't like a Fargo-Moorhead winter at all.
No, we never bring our in-laws here in the winter. It just feels like I think they question Dr. Mary living here anyway, but it would steal him back, I think, if they really knew what winter was like here. So I was thinking today, a couple of questions since I have the two of you together. One, John, we've talked a lot about we've talked a lot about the science of meteorology this week. I'm curious about the creativity or the artistry of meteorology, because there has to be some of both. Can you talk a little bit about how you straddle that? They might not be equal, but you know, if there was no creativity, then every forecast from every person would basically just be one script read by multiple people. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Our professors at Iowa State University told us about the separation of those who were studying meteorology who were meant to go into broadcasting versus those who were studying meteorology who were likely to go to graduate school. And because those were really the two factions. And we were the extroverts and the graduate students were the introverts. And we were the ones who probably struggled a little more with the calculus, got through it if we graduated, obviously, but, you know, struggled a bit more with it. For the graduate students, future graduate students, that was easy. And there was a professor of mine who said that forecasting and communicating that forecast is really a blend of art and science. And I think there's probably something to that. See, I have to come into work every day, first of all, to try and figure out what the weather's going to do. But then I have to figure out what I'm going to tell people. And so I'm picking out what are the key points. So I'm sort of like preparing an essay. What is the focus of this forecast? And sometimes it isn't really tomorrow's weather. Sometimes it's an impending snowstorm for the weekend or a chance of thunderstorms or 4 or 5 days out looming frost potential. So I have to put that together, come up with a hierarchy of what am I communicating. And then I have to come up with a hopefully clever way of presenting that, you know, and some of that is graphical. I'm not very good with computer graphics. Fortunately, we have a staff at WDAY, and there are some people who are better at graphics than I do. So if you see a cute little graphic of a bonfire forecast or something like that, Andrew or somebody else on my staff has probably made that, and I've incorporated that into the show, but I have to find a way to do that. You know, I have to find a way to communicate the message of what the weather will be. So it is a mixture of, it's an old college friend of mine asked me once, do you consider yourself a scientist or a communications person? And I said, no, I'm a communications person who does science. So that's definitely what comes first is
Sure.
the communication part of it, right? I mean, a great forecast is no good if it's not communicated.
Right.
So
how much time in a half-hour news program do you actually get for weather?
well, about, you know, it's broken up into segments now. We spread it out throughout the half hour. It's about 3 to 4 minutes. Most nights closer to 3 during this pandemic because news needs more time.
Yeah.
It's a 100-yard dash, and you know there's a lot of training and work that goes into a world record 100-yard dash, or even just a pretty good one, a personal best 100-yard dash. So, yeah, it's like Emily's painting behind us. You don't realize how much went into it sometimes.
Well, I always say to people, you know, the difference between a 4-line love poem and a 400-page novel is that the poem might have been harder to write.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be so perfect. Every single letter has to be selected. So if I'm thinking, you know, if I'm thinking about weather and I think, well, there might be 25 minutes of content that you have to pare down to 3, that is harder to do sometimes than to have somebody come on and say, well, let's do a half-hour weather segment, because you could probably talk about the weather for a half hour.
Yeah, I've had to learn over the years to be economical with words.
Yeah.
No doubt.
No varies and reallys and lots.
But at the same time, and you probably notice this, and some people roll their eyes at this, but it's actually effective. We also have to stick in a lot of forward teasing and other little things to keep the viewer hanging around, and that takes time as well. And it's sometimes I'm not even comfortable doing that. It's like I'm a traveling salesperson, but our research shows that that's how we keep an audience through our show, is by giving them a carrot to hang around a little bit. And hey, I've got something else you'll want to see in just a minute. So that's a part of it too. And that takes a lot of time out of my 3.5 minutes. So
Sure, absolutely. So Emily, my big question for you, and it's really a question for the two of you, but you can start it, is I'm really curious to know if you and John have ever collaborated artistically together. I think the answer is no, but I haven't known you your whole married life. So maybe you haven't, I just don't know about it.
Well,
there are our
that-
children.
yes.
I'll give you that. Twice you did that. Good job.
We collaborated there.
So anyway, when we were first married, I think it was before kids, we decided we would write a play.
Oh, yeah.
And our play has always been the opening sequence and then maybe a little bit in, but it's never progressed. However, we are sure we will complete it once we are retired and have time. I think we would come up with some pretty good ideas. And
you would as well.
yeah, and I don't know. We've never really, you've presented your poetry at an art show with me, but it would be good. It'd be kind of inspiring.
I think we do bounce. I mean, Emily doesn't need me to do her art, but when I go over to her studio, she'll solicit opinions, and I don't usually have one about, where the piece is going, but I can say what I like and what I don't get, and when I've done writing, I think I've read things to her and asked for bounce. We're a married couple, of course we share and
it'd be fun though to do something.
Or not, we don't know, wallpaper.
I'm kind of hoping that this prompts that, actually, because John, I learned about you as an artist because Emily, where's my hair going? For heaven's sakes,
It's got windy where
is all. Sorry. I learned about you as an artist because Emily invited me to a reading you gave at the Spirit Room, and I remember thinking,
that's the one.
What's she gonna read? I mean, I had no idea that you were a writer. And I was so struck that night, and that was years ago.
Long time ago.
Boys were little, Emily. Well, and John, he's your boy too. But as I was thinking about you this morning, I thought I would love to see I think you could do it both ways, actually. So I think John could do some writing, which Emily could then artistically respond to, and Emily could do some painting, which John, you could then writing respond to. I think that would be really compelling and would play off both of your strengths, because John, I find you to be a very practical romantic writer, and Emily, I find your work to be very practically whimsical, not whimsically practical. Okay? There's much more depth to it than to just say, like, my background is whimsical. Your work is not my background. Your work has this great depth to it, but you have to dig a little bit past the initial, that's cute, and that's part of what makes your work so compelling. And John talked about it yesterday. It's why he likes the piece behind you, because you could kind of just dismiss it as oh, that's cute, but then you really stop and think about, well, that speaks to capitalism, and it speaks to people's desire to own land and property and the whiteness. I mean, there's a million things to say about that piece. So I'm going to encourage the two of you to do that. And then I'm going to encourage you to apply for a grant from the Arts Partnership.
Thinking.
We've had a hand in making it happen. Yeah. So, you got like 10 months to think about what you want to do, and then we'll see that happen. I would like that a lot. So Danica, will you please pull up our rain gauge? I'm very excited. We cracked the 100 mark.
Yay!
Yay! So I sent out a video to some people last night, a work video, and I said to them, you know, this goal of 1,000 is starting to get a little embarrassing to keep talking about in light of how far from 1,000 we are. But I'm choosing to stay totally positive all week. It's great that we've got, I think we're at 104 donors. That's 104 people who in this time of incredible distraction and stress and anxiety have said, I think the work of the Arts Partnership matters. So you 104 people, you've all already heard from me, but I'm saying it again. Thank you so, so much. Your part of the rain gauge is actually the most important part because you got to start at the bottom and work your way up. So you have been the foundation of this week's campaign, and I really, really appreciate it. If you're watching today and you're thinking, gosh, maybe I could help, guess what? Yes, you could. You could go to theartspartnership.net/donate. Every dollar matters, every dollar counts, and it all goes towards helping us grow that gauge. We still have all day today and all day tomorrow. So no time like the present. If the work matters, if you think the arts in the community matter, you can be a part of supporting it. Emily has gotten a number of grants from us in the past to do really interesting things. Emily, will you just do like a 2-minute what you've done with some of the grants that we've given? Because some of this money will definitely go towards our individual arts partnership grant program.
I got a grant for equipment, like for an exhaust system for when I began encaustics, which is working with beeswax and resin. I also got a grant to take a 5-day workshop on encaustics out in Massachusetts, which was huge. My next grant was to go and study one-on-one with an artist out in Montana, studying cold wax and oil. So, I mean, these are huge, and those trips would never have happened to be with really exceptional artists had I not had a grant.
Yeah, so some of these dollars will go directly to that, because you can imagine this spring we didn't get to have the fundraiser we normally have where we raise the money to ensure that. So if making sure that artists can go out and learn more, and more importantly, bring it back and then share it. You said at the start of our conversation, you're doing an online encaustic workshop.
Yes, I will be announcing that in the next couple of days, and I'm very excited because I can serve more people online than I could have in my studio. So I'm hoping that 30-40 people will be able to participate in something that I could have only had 8, probably maximum.
Well, and people from all over the world, actually, anybody could come.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's a perfect example of what these grants can do. Emily went out, she had new opportunities, and she came back, and now she's sharing that learning and creating new opportunities for local artists and others. So if that matters to you, if communication about the arts matters to you, if advocacy about the arts matters to you, or if you just care that there is a very active, dynamic, responsive umbrella arts organization in this community that's lifting up local artists and local arts organizations, then I hope today and tomorrow you will not only donate to us, but also talk online about why this matters and why you would invite other people to donate. I'm going to just stay optimistic till the bitter end. I still think we can get to 1,000 donors. It's only 450 people a day. That's nothing. So John and Emily, have a great, great day. I loved having you together today. That was very fun.
Yes.
Thanks again to WGAY for the loan of John Wheeler. This meteorological conversations this week have been really, really interesting. I'm already kind of sad that they're going to be done tomorrow. So I will see you tomorrow morning, John, at 10 a.m. Emily will share the link of your video on this post, so you'll be able to find that later today. And have an excellent day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bye.